The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Massive changes are underway in society that are improving the lives of most people. Those same changes are having a growing impact on young men who are wrestling with what masculinity means, says Alex Cordero, the author of How to Be a Dude in the 21st Century. Cordero says boys are struggling to understand masculinity versus toxic masculinity, and that's why he wrote his book, to help them navigate their way forward. In a 2024 article in Psychology Today, neurosurgeon, teacher, and author Gary R. Simonds, MD, says men are falling behind dramatically. They risk unemployability and irrelevancy in our ever-modernizing society. The gap between female and male academic performance is substantial and widening, and will soon translate into a similar gap in graduate degrees, employment opportunities, career success, and earnings. Cordero agrees. He says the loss of motivation in young men is clear. We've seen a rising number of young men who feel disconnected. They're idle, and in many cases ignorant, and this leaves them vulnerable to respond with fear, disappointment, frustration, and embarrassment. I invited author Alex Cordero to join me for a conversation that matters about working to ensure boys grow into men who are motivated contributors to our changing society and workplaces. Alex, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart.
So what was it that motivated you to write this book? What were some of the tall tale signs that made you say, okay, we need to speak up about this?
Well, I am a coach and teacher, and I've been teaching young people for over a decade. And about 5-6 years ago, I started noticing a shift in my young male students. They were between 16 and 20 or 16 and 25, where they started to become a little bit more pensive, more anxious. They weren't as decided with their decision-making skills, as compared with my young female students, who were in turn becoming more empowered. They seemed like they got their decision-making skills together. They were very excited about life, and I started to see a widening gap year by year until about last year, when I really saw the biggest gap. And it's actually shocking how big the gap is. And the women are really, really doing well, the young women, compared to the young men.
And kudos to them. I mean, this
Yes.
is what we wanted to see.
It is.
We wanted to see a society where everybody has access to opportunity and the ability to realize their potential.
Yes.
But you say in the process, and there seems to be growing evidence, that young men are being left out of this equation right now, which is, in a way, odd to be saying.
Well, I think there was a belief in the past that men are very strong, and whatever tests or whatever we put to men, they will still be strong. But unfortunately, it seems like that theory may have some holes in it, and a lot of young men are starting to become disenfranchised, to become weak, lack of motivation. There's a lot of different factors that are actually quite frightening that I've found, and I've observed with my coaching and teaching. And even hockey players or lacrosse players from 6 years ago are much different than they are today.
How so?
Well, I'll give you an example. So I taught a lot of lacrosse players and hockey players who are some of the most confident and fiercest competitors that there are. And if I taught them 8 years ago, their decision-making skills, their bravado, their can-do attitude was unmistakable. Last year or 2 years ago, these same lacrosse and hockey players would always ask for permission. They were scared to act and make a decision, and they were fearful of anything. And a lot of them were actually becoming introverted, where 6, 8, 10 years ago, these same athletes were very extroverted, very boisterous, very raucous, almost too much. But that's the contrast that I observed in my job.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. I find it interesting that you say that hockey and lacrosse, hockey in particular, I've always thought has been a great sport for young men.
Yes.
And the reasons for it are, number one, it's a locker room sport.
Yes.
And so you go, okay, you get in there and you get to share, like you're amongst your peers.
Yes.
And in hockey, you have to go into the locker room to get ready to be able to play hockey. Most other recreational or amateur sports, you show up dressed, you go on the field, you go home. So you don't have that same team building experience. But one of the other things that I appreciated about hockey is it's a really hard game to play.
Yes.
And even when you're playing non-contact or minimal contact, you're going to get hit, you're going to fall on the ice, and you're given an opportunity to go, okay, am I going to sit here and go, oh, poor me, or do you pick yourself up off the ice and get back into the game? And so, but you're saying that you're starting to see the advantages of an activity like that aren't being realized as far as helping young men build confidence.
Well, your example about falling down, it's actually a great example because, in the last few years, because of CTE, they've actually asked players, and I understand because my younger son's a lacrosse player. Because of CTE, they've asked players to stay down, but sometimes they don't encourage them to just get back up. And, just for a simple hit, or if they just fall down, they just trip down, a lot of kids now tend to stay down. They don't have the same resilience that these same players did even 6-8 years ago. And I actually saw this firsthand when I watch lacrosse games, because I watch a lot of lacrosse. The games I watch now, the youth games, they're much different than they were 10 years ago.
For viewers who don't know what you're talking about, what do you mean they're being encouraged to stay down? And CTE?
Yeah, CTE is the brain injuries from football, from repeated head injuries.
Concussions.
Yeah, concussions.
Right.
But now, even if they trip, even if they scrape their knee, a lot of players are not resilient where they just get back up. There's a growing number of, they're encouraged to even stay down, draw a penalty, instead of just getting up.
But isn't so much of life about we get bashed around? Like you go, okay, well, where else are you going to get bashed around like that? Go into the workplace. I mean, there are competitive elements always at work. And it's very easy for someone to come up against what appears to be a roadblock and go, okay, well, I'm going to stay down. But the world just keeps on moving. We have to have an ability to get back up, dust ourselves off, and get back into the game.
Yes, well, that's the biggest difference than, 30, 40 years ago, even 10 years ago, is that, back in the past, we had kinesthetic play where we did hands-on, we played rough with each other, we would wrestle in recess, and even if we got hurt a little bit, we would get back up.
Well, so that's an interesting thing because I've sort of maintained that kind of play is one of the few places where it's okay for boys to have physical contact with another human being.
Yes.
And in that physical contact, I mean, if you ever wonder if you exist, bump into somebody, you exist. But if we're removing that ability to have that kind of physical interaction, and especially for boys who are not so expressive, young boys, you can't run around hugging everybody and all that kind of stuff the same way that their female counterparts can. Mm-hmm. Where do we give them that opportunity to validate themselves?
Well, that's correct. I mean, when young boys hit each other and play around and wrestle,
roughhousing,
where they roughhouse, it's actually a healthy release of testosterone. When they're not able to release the testosterone and they don't release it, and eventually, I'm not a neuroscientist, but eventually it seems like it's leading to some behaviors that it would be advantageous to actually do a study on this.
Well, in that article that I cited in Psychology Today, that neurosurgeon says those feelings get bottled up, and then they reach a point of frustration, they boil over, and we're seeing even more toxic outcomes as a result. So you're seeing disenfranchised young men who are now lashing out actively against the very society that we've all wanted to encourage to be the place that we want to call home.
Well, that's the thing about toxic masculinity, or our perceived thoughts about toxic masculinity, is that we think that if boys are releasing testosterone, that we think that it's toxic. It's actually a healthy release of testosterone. What we want to do is have structure in place so that that healthy release doesn't go too far. So we want to have controlled aggression, but we want to give these boys an opportunity to release that aggression. One of the things, as tennis players, I'm a tennis player, and one of the drills one of my coaches did 3 years ago is controlled aggression, where we were encouraged to hit out, try to hit a winner. And if we didn't hit a winner, we had to control our emotions, because tennis is a great barometer for discipline. In tennis, we win or lose a point every point. And if we keep losing a point, we have to keep our cool. And it teaches us discipline. It teaches us how to control ourselves. And sometimes we don't, but we learn from these lessons, these life lessons that sport teaches. I cite tennis because I'm a big tennis player, but it's in basketball, in hockey. I'm a golf pro. So in golf, it is paramount to keep your emotional balance. I'm a professional golfer, and if I'm 1 or 2 under, and then one hole I mess it up royally, and I do if I have a triple, double, or quadruple bogey, I can't lose my mind. I have to take a deep breath and recenter myself. But I have that skill because I played multiple sports at a high level, and I know how to reset. I know how to calm myself down. These same boys, if they don't know how to release that testosterone in a healthy way, they may not know how to have a healthy release when it comes to a real life situation with a partner, in a relationship, in a workplace, in school. If they have a hard test coming up and they bomb the test, they may not know how to get back up. Relationships with their parents, with their peers.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. In your book, you talk about young men are not taught to embrace their masculinity.
Yes.
As though somehow it's wrong.
Yes. A growing number of people, young men that I speak with, they are very frustrated with the controls and maybe not controls, but the ideology that is being taught to them about masculinity, or the lack of mentorship that's being taught to young men about masculinity. There's not that many places right now where they encourage a healthy release of masculinity, of testosterone, and I fully support sport as a great learning tool for this. Not just lifting weights, not just building muscle, but actually playing sports and competing, winning, losing, learning all the things that go with competition.
Pushing yourself to be the best you can
Pushing
be.
yourself to be the best, to goal set really high. And if you don't reach your goal, you learn from your mistakes, you improve it through practice, and you get back up. A growth mindset. Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset about 30 years ago about young people and their learning styles. And unfortunately for young men, it seems like we become a fixed mindset society for them, instead of teaching them to try their best, irregardless of the outcome. And if it doesn't go well, to learn from that mistake and get back up right away. Or get back right away, learn from the mistake, and then try again.
Right.
And it just seems like it's not happening for a lot of young men these days, in sport or in everyday life. And less young men are actually playing sports.
So we're moving into a society where physical prowess is not like the dominant trait that has been the course of human history.
Yes.
Where we have to have a skill set that allows us to work together, to focus in on our intellectual capabilities, yes, and be innovative and use technology in a team environment.
Yes.
What is it like? And so you go, okay, well, yeah, let's move towards that. Let's maybe remove some of that focus on sports and get everybody moving in that direction. But what is it about the educational system right now that isn't addressing the needs of young men to be able to realize their potential?
Well, it's multifaceted and it's actually very complex. But the first thing I will say is that these young men are not encouraged to work together in school. Now, sorry, maybe that came out wrong, but it just seems like they don't have the same level of cohesion. They don't encourage teamwork in sports. There's a lot of social media in terms of, the LeBron effect, where they want to show their skills instead of working as a team to try to win. But if we take sports out, even in music, so I know a lot of young musicians, and they don't have the same cohesion where they can read off each other because their communication skills are not as proficient as they were 6, 10, 20 years ago with the same age group. So those communication skills need to be improved, and schools should start to advocate ways on how to do it.
So how do we change the equation a bit? Because we don't want to say, okay, no, we want to tilt it back the other way, only in favor of young boys, because we need everybody to benefit. But how do we start to change the equation so that young boys are getting the education that they need?
Yes.
And I say that in the knowledge that science has demonstrated that boys and girls learn differently.
Yes.
So we can't say, well, we're going to give you the same curriculum and the same teaching style. We need to have different elements within it. Where does it start from your perspective?
Well, I think it starts at a very young age. I think it starts from physical literacy when they're 4 or 5, just throwing a ball with their parents or their friends.
So this is at home.
This is at home.
Parents play a big role.
Parents play a massive role. Not giving them an iPad right away, but actually doing kinesthetic things, going out for a walk, getting them to get stronger, to be more coordinated, physical literacy, to touch a ball, to touch a rock, to touch a stick, throw it into a lake. There's so many things that we can do as a society to encourage, where it seems like now our society is at home. So what's happened with the young men compared to the young women, what I've noticed, and this is just my observation, in the decades that I've been teaching, the young women are multi-sport, or they do dance, they do ballet, they do music. So, if I have a young female student, she'll have piano practice and then soccer and then softball, where the young men may have one sport and then they go home and they game. And it's actually a really big problem is the gaming, where young men, and young women game, but not to the excess of the young men, where the young men now find their tribe online in chat groups while they're gaming. So instead of being out in the field or in a basketball court, shooting the breeze with the other young men, they're doing it in a chat room, thinking that, hey, I'm getting the same level of cohesion or communication skills. But you're not seeing face-to-face, you're not seeing body language, you're not developing these social cues. And a lot of young men now are not comfortable to be outside. They're not comfortable riding the bus or being on a date. They don't have the same skills, communication skills, or the confidence to go up and ask a girl, hey, do you want to go hang out, watch a movie this Friday? Or do you want to hang out on the beach, grab a bite to eat? These same skills are actually backed by research in the US, where young men from 18 to 25 in the last year about 45% have not voluntarily talked to a woman outside of school or something that's forced voluntarily for the last year, 45%.
No, just not talk to them at all.
Have not talked voluntarily.
And what do they cite as the reason for that? This disconnection?
Yeah, this disconnection, lack of communication skills, the lack of confidence, because they're always at home. They never get to practice these social cues, where the young women are playing sports, they're playing volleyball, they're out, they're in dance, and they're always in bigger social groups. They're able to develop their communication skills like they were before, but the young men are being left behind because they're just at home.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. How then, because at an early age you can understand how a parent plays a fundamental role in that. These are the programs that I'm going to put you in. I'm going to make sure that you get from soccer to now you're going to go to band practice or something else, and then if you want chess or but we're going to put you there. Once you start to move into the school system, though, how does that environment need to make adjustments that can support boys, especially if they can identify that this is a young person who has been living this life where there is a tremendous amount of isolation and their relationship is now with the screen?
Well, that is the challenge, Stuart. That is the big challenge, because a lot of people are really comfortable, a lot of young people are really comfortable through the screen. Well, but young men, even young women, but young men. But once it becomes face-to-face, they can't speak. They freeze up. And that's a big problem. It's like, I remember when I was in grade 7 and I had to do a presentation in front of the class. The first time I ever did it, I was petrified, because I was afraid to be judged. I was afraid of what people will say. But because I did it, and I don't know how I did, but each time you do it, you develop a little bit more confidence. No matter how you did, you just need to try and do it. Just like myself right now here in this interview, if I'm scared, if I didn't have all those developmental skills in grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, I wouldn't be able to be calm in your interview. And these are things that we need to develop in young people, young men. But these skills are sorely lacking. In the schools, it seems like they could do a better job to teach communication skills, to teach social skills, instead of just teaching whatever they're teaching, these very fundamental human skills.
So you have just reminded me, there's a fabulous book out there called Anti-Fragile.
Yes.
And in it, the author says, people talk about resiliency.
Yes.
And he goes, that's not what you want. You want an experience that you have been challenged by, maybe even taken a hit from.
Yes.
Not to make you wilt, but to strengthen you.
Yes.
And he uses the example of a samurai sword, which is struck so many times that it becomes like the hardest steel in the world.
Yes.
And are we depriving young boys of the ability to learn through sort of the harsh reality of life, and that they don't get the opportunity to become anti-fragile? They're actually becoming more fragile.
Well, I think because we're over-legislating their behavior by saying, no, you can't do this, no. That kinesthetic, that hands-on discovery for young men is not there as compared to the young women, where they're allowed to, it seems like they have a little bit more freedom to express. And about 5-6 years ago, talking to some other people, and again, I don't want to quote this, but it just seems like after Me Too, young men have started to become a little bit less decisive. It seems like they have been taught to ask for permission for everything, but now they don't have initiative to do anything.
Well, this is an important discussion that has to go on. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
I'm sorry.
So thanks for coming in, because I think that we need to raise a level of awareness of the fact that the needs of young men, especially from a psychological and emotional perspective, need to be addressed. Thanks.
Thank you.